Welcome to Flip Your Lid with Kim Honeycutt. Kim is a psychotherapist and executive director of ICU Talks, a mental health speaking ministry. This is a podcast about how to flip your lid and learning how to reconnect to who you really are.
All right, Flip Your Lid audience. I'm fangirling a little bit, I got to tell y'all, and I have incredible respect for Dr. Carol George. She is our guest today. She is a pioneer when it comes to attachment styles, and if you have any understanding of attachment trauma, understanding of the value of understanding all the attachments that are potential out there, then you're about to have your intellect really stimulated, because what she brings to the table is way beyond anyone I've ever talked to when it comes to understanding our attachment wounding. So, Dr. Carol George, such an honor to have you on Flip Your Lid.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, really glad you're
I'm
here.
sure we're going to dig, and I'll follow your lead on that.
All right, we're going to do some digging, and she's got some things she's bringing to the table that I learned about recently through all my studying. She's going to talk about two different types of attachment strategies that I did not know about. And they are very relevant to, one of them particularly is very relevant to my life. And so we're going to get some new information. But before we get there, Carol, and by the way, I have permission to call her Carol because we friends. So whatever. So tell us first, please tell us a little bit about what flipped your lid. And tell us about what measures you've had to take in life to reconnect to who you really are.
Well, my flip my lid path is a trisom. It started in childhood with my father in particular, because he was an amateur fisherman, and I developed a love of biology and the sea, accompanying him at the time on many, many trips as a child throughout my childhood. And the sea and biology became part of me. Not so much the fishing part,
Right.
but the sea and the biology. Step two was my husband, who I met 50 years ago, or over 50 years ago. And my husband is an explorer. He's also my secure base. And he really encouraged and supported me through, especially graduate school, which is very difficult. And this was a long time ago, so it was really difficult for women. We had 2 children while I was in graduate school. So he's been my rock of Gibraltar. In the field we call it secure base. And he's also an explorer. And he guided me, as my parents did, to explore, but he guided me to explore things that together that I had never explored.
That is wonderful.
So the third part is putting my love of the sea and, of course, my love for my father, who also was a Rock of Gibraltar person, together with my husband. I was in graduate school and I discovered attachment theory, where I could put together my love of biology, since attachment theory is built on evolutionary biology.
Yes.
Exploration, which I now felt really safe to do, which includes, falling down and picking yourself back up or having someone help you. So my path is an amalgam of those three, basically.
Yeah, it's a wonderful path. And in that, like, so many other people now have a new path, or they even have a new internal map or better understanding of their internal map because of the work you've done, the research, and your ability to articulate what you have discovered. So let me start with something simple, and then I know we're going to go deep. So what is your theory on why attachment styles overall are not being taught in graduate programs?
My first response to that is how frustrating that is.
Yes.
The reason they're not being taught is partly because knowing about attachment patterns requires assessment. And assessment has dropped out of graduate school. We don't teach assessment to our future clinicians. And the other piece about attachment is that, I'll continue from that. you can't just say, I think a person's pattern is this. You really have to have some kind of an assessment. People are really good at presenting who they aren't
Yeah,
we?
that's good. Yes, we are.
I mean, that's what
self.
defenses are all about.
Well, and we also throw it there for people listening. And if I say this incorrectly, and this is, I'm going to be very mundane and very basic with this, but just so people understand, this was my understanding until I met you, Carol. There were 4 attachment styles. Everybody has a primary attachment style. This usually develops in the first 18 months. It doesn't mean there aren't events, particularly in the first 5 years, that helps you get more and more understanding of how to attach, which means this is how you have figured out how to be in relationships, to protect yourself, or to be open. How connected can you be without harm, right? And there's attachment wounding, but there's secure connection, a secure bond, which I think is very common. People understand that. They understand attunement and mutual delight and play and being spontaneous. Like there's some understanding of child and parent secure connection. And then we get into insecure connection, which is preoccupied, and which is a little, to put it simply, it's I'm not okay, let me make sure you're okay. There's dismissive avoidant, which means I'm okay, I'm oblivious if you're okay. And then the 4th is called unresolved or dysregulated or fearful avoidant, which is I'm not okay and you're not okay. I just don't really have a map how to be in a relationship. That is about as simple as I can make
That's
it.
nice.
Yeah. All right. Then I met you. And I found out there's 2 others that are very important for people to have an understanding of. So can you elaborate? Because you have inside information. You have worked with Bowlby and like you have so much information. Can you help us understand these other 2?
Sure. And you know what? I'm going to go back to your description, which was very nice.
Thank you.
But there's basically only 3 patterns.
Mm.
And the 3 patterns are secure, ambivalent, resistant, preoccupied, and dismissing, avoidant.
Mm.
And so that takes us back to Mary Ainsworth.
Right.
So this unresolved pattern that you described was the product of finding out that there were, first of all, babies, and later on adults, and somewhere in the middle childhood and adolescence, that there were individuals who showed one of those 3 basic those are biologically based patterns. And in my work, those patterns are based on defensive processing, and that's how I see the personality being formed as products of defense. Those individuals that they just didn't quite fit the pattern that you beautifully described. And the reason they don't fit is because of trauma and what we know now, and because parents turned away, is the way that I describe it, from them, and didn't provide attunement, but didn't even provide the opportunity for consistent, reliable connection. We got the 4th pattern through my advisor, Mary Main, because she was interested at the time, and we had a direct connection to John Bowlby, who was alive at the time. He was sending us papers by mail.
Wow.
We didn't have fax. That's how old I am. About the chapters of his lost book, and they were all about loss through death. And Bowlby had worked with Colin Parks, and Bowlby and Colin Parks were the foundation of what's really popular now for the Kubler-Ross model of grief. And Mary Main created a category, which was never part of Bowlby's work, called unresolved. And then we all created an interview called the Adult Attachment Interview, which I created as part of my dissertation with Mary and another person whose name is Nancy Kaplan. And Mary's particular interest was in the unresolved, and we all become interested in what we know or we feel, right? So there's Mary is now dead. She's passed. There is a description of her life that will come out soon in the Journal of Attachment and Human Development. Mary protected us a lot from the losses and problems that she'd had in her life. But now, having read this piece about her, I can see why she wanted to focus on loss.
Yeah.
And it took off because the AAI, adult attachment interview, took off. If we go back to Bowlby, I always go back to Ainsworth and Bowlby. So if we go back to Bowlby, what we learn is there are more ways in which people responded to the trauma of loss in their lives. And Bowlby describes those in his volume called Loss, which is a very difficult volume to read. It's not he was just beginning, and then sadly he died, and then he came back to life and finished his work on Darwin, who was his cousin, and then he died. So he never really got to elaborate on that work. And my colleague Judith Solm and I have over the years taken that work, and then my work with Mac West and the adult realm, to try to understand these other variations. So that's a long preamble or explanation for why there are actually 3 basic patterns and 3 traumatized patterns. The 3 patterns are secure, ambivalent, resistant, preoccupied, avoidant, dismissing. There is a form of chronic mourning that Mary Main called unresolved, and this called fearful actually comes out of personality social psychology, and it's different.
Okay.
But attachment theory is based on fear.
Right.
Everybody is frightened. What do we do about it? How do our attachment figures help us? So unresolved, we already know a lot about. The other 2 are ways in which we can't finish or even start the grief process that needs to occur when we have trauma. So Bowlby was interested, therefore Main was interested in loss through death. Mac and I and Judith were interested in what other ways parents could turn away if they're not there and they're gone. That certainly is a felt the child is turning away. Some parents turn away, but they've also built into the family system and in the relationship the script of, we're not going to talk about my turning away. We're not going to talk about our emotions. I want you to focus on something else in life. And we call this, John Bowlby called this failed mourning. I'm beginning to use the term blocked failed mourning, because unfortunately there's some people out there who, when they do their assessment and you say, well, failed mourning means you haven't started mourning yet, you haven't started your grief. They say, oh, I failed at something else. And that's not what we want to say. We said your biology and your defenses are not letting you grieve.
Right.
So that's one pattern. And it's a manifestation of dismissing avoidant, but embedded in trauma. And the third piece is a manifestation of preoccupied, ambivalent attachment, but also embedded in trauma. And what happens in that particular pattern is that the individual is aware of their trauma. It's like Mac and I call it living in the war zone. And they're chronically frightened and they're hypervigilant, but they see the world from the lens of trauma, whereas the blocked failed mourning isn't going to see the trauma as best as possible.
Okay.
And so they become more hypervigilant. So we have these 3 reactions. And what's different from unresolved is the unresolved individual can be going along just fine and then gets flooded and triggered, and often can't predict when that's going to happen. So these 3 ideas about how we respond to trauma are floating around out there. And the 2 that I described, that I added to your list, have not been part of assessment. My work and my work with Judith Solomon and Mac West is the only people who really have been able to say and offer to therapists and people who do clinical work, here's how you know where your client is. And there are different manifestations. So it's really important to know and not just guess at which manifestation of trauma that you're seeing in your clients.
Okay, so I got to ask this, and I want to make sure we're tracking together. So if someone has preoccupation with suffering, like they are preoccupied, but they have trauma within that preoccupation, which I think you've
Yeah.
called preoccupation with suffering, that would, what would I see differently in them opposed to someone that would look unresolved?
They tend to be more like PTSD
Hmm.
clients, although many PTSD clients are also unresolved. But there is this sense of a combination of knowing that they're frightened, knowing that they have to be hypervigilant. They can't tell you why.
Hmm.
There's a fog.
Hmm.
They just can't tell you what dragon is lying behind the fog. So the fog is the defense, okay, which is the preoccupied sufferer's defense. But they know something's there and they ruminate about it and they are very hypervigilant and frightened. Compared to the unresolved person who can talk about the traumas that they've had, they're aware of them. What they can't predict is how they're going to be triggered and become unglued by them.
Hmm. Hmm.
So the preoccupied sufferer is hanging on by their fingernails,
Hmm.
and the unresolved person is often functioning fine in the real world,
Hmm.
but gets clouded by being triggered. And then they fall apart and put themselves back together or get some help, and then they go forward. All of those people in those three groups I've mentioned, described, following Bowlby, they all have problems with grief. They haven't mourned the attachment trauma. All of them have lost parts of themselves, even if they haven't lost their attachment figures. S-
So, all right. So, stranger situation test, right?
Yeah,
That
yeah,
produces this beautiful knowledge and helps us understand and kind of measure secure connection, preoccupied, ambivalent, preoccupied, and then the avoidant, dismissive.
right,
That's that three. Later comes unresolved, dismissive, blocked, failed mourning, and preoccupation with suffering.
right,
Right.
right.
So I have, and even my published work is about me having unresolved attachment because what made sense to me was my mother coupled love and abuse, fear and comfort, like all of that got coupled for me.
Yeah,
Right. So
yeah.
that made sense to me. Then I did the AAP with you, and based on, and the AAP means, and this is the only way to truly know your attachment style. Like we can go online and take the test and all that, right? But that the best way to know is to look at the 8 pictures and have your assessment. Is that
Yes,
correct?
because the other places, the other assessments, I wouldn't trust the ones online at all, actually. Um, but the other assessments will only give you a tidbit of the four patterns. They're
Mhm.
the only way to understand whether your mourning has been blocked or whether you actually are kind of unresolved but more preoccupied with what's happening, your safety and frightened is right now the AP. I hope that changes.
Mhm.
But that's it. Yeah.
Right. So I met with Carol, and so did my wife. We both did this. This is a beautiful instrument for all relationships, but for me, being new in a marriage, it was incredible, instrument and vessel to have. And so I looked at the 8 pictures. My wife looked at the 8 pictures. We did it individually. We weren't allowed to talk about it. Dr. George told us we had to keep secrets in our marriage. We were not allowed to talk about it at all until we had both had the results. And then we looked at 8 pictures. Then we met individually with you. You went over all of our stuff, and then we could compare. And and that is when you told me my primary attachment style was dismissive, blocked, failed mourning.
Yeah.
And so again, it's an internal adjustment from believing I was unresolved, and then now learning and really wanting to know as much as I can now. What's the difference? What's my work to do? What do I pay attention to? Because something is happening and has been happening since you shared that with me.
You weren't wrong the first time.
That's good to know. I'm never wrong is what I just heard. So I've never been wrong. Thank you.
Okay. You
Okay.
weren't wrong with what you felt.
Mm.
You weren't wrong. I've been working with your clients and other clients for quite a while. And I find that when I first talk about the assessment results, they know how they feel.
Mm-hmm.
And I've only had one client who I think was a little surprised. One
Yeah.
out of lots and lots and lots
Yeah.
of people.
Yeah.
So you weren't wrong.
Mm.
But what happened was because you're smart and you want to know more and you want to work on
Mm-hmm.
yourself and you want to help others, you only had 4 choices.
Right.
Which door are you going to open?
Yeah. Right.
Okay, well, I'm going to open the unresolved door because that's the only other choice that anyone's ever talked about.
Mm.
And in that way, you were not wrong.
Okay.
And the combination of love and maltreatment and abuse, which you described, is a conundrum
Mm-hmm.
that would have shown up with a child as that disorganized group.
Yeah.
But what happens is what is disorganized as a baby, we don't have a way with a baby to assess those other 2 groups.
Right.
So you would have looked disorganized, which some people have just said that's unresolved. That's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
So you weren't wrong. What the AAP offered you is right now as an adult, what are you doing about it?
Mm.
How are you handling your experience? And that may have been different. We don't have a video of you growing up.
Right.
So the AAP and other assessments like it, even the AAI, are saying, how are you managing right now?
Yeah.
And what failed mourning, blocked mourning, said to you was, you have had a lot of pain and sadness and shame, having been turned away from by
Mm-hmm.
your parent, which is
Mm-hmm.
what happens when abuse happens. And it's particularly difficult in an abuse situation because the person who's supposed to, your biology says, is supposed to protect and comfort you is the one who is not doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So you're caught in this conflict. Do I go? Do I not go? And that was where I actually started in my work, was with children, preschool age children who'd been physically abused.
Mm.
And so, but there was also a message in your family that you picked up about one of these other 3 patterns, the regulating patterns.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm feeling frightened inside, how do I regulate?
Mm-hmm.
I've been told I have to do it on my own. My parents have turned away from me.
Yeah.
It's not safe. I'm not going to go there.
Mm-hmm.
But what other messages do I get in my relationships and my family about how to regulate everyday life? The stressors of everyday life, not just the turning away. And the message you got was, we're not going to talk about emotions. You need to do well in school.
Mm-hmm.
You need to do what you're told. We value you get good grades. Achievement is what we call it. And they push the attachment needs into the domain of what we call exploration. Be
Mm.
competent, explore the world, do well, get a job, get an education, follow the rules that society and the family have laid for you as an individual, not just you, Kim, but other individuals. This is what we do in our lives. This is what we do in our culture. This is what we do in our society. And that is how the dismissing attachment is built. That's how dismissing attachment, whether there's trauma or not, regulates the child's need to be close.
Mm.
So when you put those 2 things together, what the AAP told you was, I'm not going to explore my pain.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Absolutely.
not going to feel my pain.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to explore what I've lost.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to explore the world
Yeah.
instead.
Yeah.
And that's what happens with blocked failed mourning.
Mm-hmm.
You shift your attention away so that any residues of the trauma that you experience that pop up in the moment, you say, no, the door's closed. We're not doing that right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And is that, if you compare that to the preoccupied with suffering, which I'm just learning about, is the difference the preoccupied person is seeking more in relationship to explore a world, like they're more relationship and other reference, whereas for me dismissive and means I'm more detached.
You're more detached, and you're detached from emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And a person who is dismissive, is not as invested in the intimacy of closeness,
Right.
because that was not okay.
Right. Right. Wasn't
And the
safe. There's
person,
nothing safe about it.
because you have trauma,
Right.
yes. But for your garden variety, I'll use that word, dismissing person without trauma, and there are individuals, being close is uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right that the preoccupied person, emotions are part of the conversation. Closeness is a part of the conversation, but it never, there's always an interruption, or something doesn't go quite right. And parent and child become very confused about
Mm-hmm.
the parent. I talk with so many moms and dads. I can't understand what my child is trying to tell me. And then we watch the videos, or we talk with the kids later on. They say, I'm trying to tell my parents, but they don't understand what I'm trying to say. And they get caught in this cycle of confusion, which creates a fog of there's no clarity
Mm-hmm.
in our emotions, there's no
Mm-hmm.
clarity in our communication. So when you add trauma onto that,
Mm-hmm.
the person who is the preoccupied sufferer might even be confused about if that trauma actually occurred.
Mm-hmm.
There's such a deep fog. And then they can't really tell you the details. And when they try to blow away the fog, they might get a bitter peace, and there might just be a feeling, but they don't know what to do with it because they don't have a bigger picture to put it into.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when the memory of trauma comes up for the dismissing individual, the pieces are there.
Yeah.
They just say, nope, not now.
Yeah.
The door's closed.
Right.
So what happens when you're feeling that confused inside, it makes us anxious. And we all
Mm-hmm.
share little bits and pieces of these feelings. And so the preoccupied person is, and the children as well, they're naturally anxious because they're so confused. They don't know what's up or down or where things are going. And that anxiety then um, drives them really to want to be closer to other people.
Mm-hmm.
They want help,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't know how to communicate, and they don't know how to get it. So there is that push towards a closer intimacy that you described, but there's also a frustration because they don't know how to create intimacy, and they don't even know how to respond to it when they have it, because they don't have that knowing inside. So
Mm-hmm.
everybody gets frustrated, but there is a craving for closeness.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas for the dismissing individual, there's, yeah, we'll just keep our distance a little bit here,
Mm-hmm.
and we can do things together and even laugh and have a good time. But I don't need to feel that close, because I really can't depend on you wanting to be that close. And if I reach out to be that close, my experience has been, you'll say, oh, let's go explore something. Let's talk about friends. Let's talk about the museum. you know?
Mm-hmm.
So yes, there is that imbalance. And the unresolved individual can have any of those patterns.
Mm-hmm.
You can have a secure person who's unresolved, a dismissing person who's unresolved, a preoccupied person who's unresolved. What makes them unresolved is that those moments of those ideas about trauma will unpredictably trigger them and just demolish them in the moment. And then when they recover, they can go back to their main regulatory strategy, which includes security.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so make sure I get this right. So you were saying that somebody can have just normal dismissive. No, let's do secure. Let's do complete. Like they have sense of security. They have like a what people call like a big event trauma, a big T, and and so when something happens that causes the regression or physiological reaction to that trauma, they leave secure base, they leave secure connection, and they will go into unresolved,
Mhm.
but can quickly go back to secure.
I don't know how quickly, but they certainly are more easily resilient. I like to use the word resilience.
So
They're more easily resilient than the
sure.
insecure patterns.
Am I misusing, or most of us misusing unresolved? Because I get told disorganized. I was first told it was called disorganized. Then I was told it was called unresolved. Then I was told it's called fearful avoidant. I think we're all misusing these terms.
I would agree, but it's not your fault.
Right. Nothing's my fault. Y'all hear this? I'm never wrong, and nothing's my fault so far.
It's
Got
not.
that. Okay.
We have, let's see, disorganized attachment was discovered by Mary Main and Judith Solomon, first publication, 1986.
Yeah.
Some of your listeners weren't even born then.
True.
Okay.
True.
And when the adult attachment interview came out, it was such a revelation about how we could assess what was happening in the mind, and not have people just have to report to us, because self-report, we are in charge of what we tell people. And then because of Mary's interest in unresolved, that's as far as it's gotten since 1990.
Mm.
We're talking about many decades of this track. But until somebody came along to say, maybe there's more, which is what Judith Solomon and I did,
Right.
and then Mac and I did, there's already I'd say a resistance, or at least if it's not conscious resistance, there's already a script about what attachment is, and you were given the script. And when you're following a script, there's no room for something else.
Mm-hmm.
That's just how we work as humans. And,
Right.
and so now through the AAP and gradually through our writings, and through clinical consultation and working with up and coming clinicians, we're trying to add the something else, which is a little bit more complicated. But once you set it out the way that you did, you have 3 regulating groups and 3 dysregulated groups. Where are you?
Mm-hmm.
It makes it simpler. But you weren't wrong. That was the script you were given.
Mm-hmm.
I will say to your listeners that there are 2 camps in attachment. And most of one camp is developmental, which is I do. It's the work of John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth, and those of us who were trained first and foremost to be developmental psychologists, to take you from prenatal to your deathbed.
Mm-hmm.
Then there are the social personality psychologists who are interested more in personality. They glopped onto the words of attachment. They call it attachment style because style is a personality term. And the work that they did was based on how reports, paper and pencil, and there's fearful that you were talking about. The person who Mary gave the AAI to, a person who was in Kim Bartholomew. She was studying at Stanford, very close by. And Stanford took an old personality theory, by Millen's personality theory. It's a 4-quadrant theory. And she took her attachment and she just put it into that theory and renamed all of Millen's groups. So when you read about, and then the validity work that was done on that, on personality, was done on the basis of how romantic partners got along with one another, including their sexual satisfaction in the relationship. So when your listeners read about on the internet, because everybody goes to the internet now, right?
Yes.
You're mostly reading about the personality work.
Okay. Thank you for saying that, because I was taught from the get-go, and again, I learned this on my own, right? No one taught me this in graduate school, that there were styles. I've never until this moment heard that as a personality style, right? Because personality to me is what we present with to feel safe and to keep people at whatever safe distance. So I appreciate you saying that. So I was taught attachment styles, never correlated that personality until this moment, but I was taught they were actually strategies. This is what you were taught to do to be in relationship, and that you think, because it's so ingrained at such a young age, we think this is the one style that will get us where we want to go, whether that's deeper or at a distance. And so your explanation is so much better.
It's about being safe.
Yes.
And for the personality people, it's also about being safe in a romantic relationship. Unfortunately, the work hasn't been done to say how much of that work of style is based on childhood. It hasn't shown up in the research. And John Bowlby set the seeds for this.
Mhm.
He talked about personality, but no one's ever really been able to define where personality is in terms of attachment. My view, I think, is similar to what you just described,
Mm.
that the personality uses defenses
Mhm.
is part of our defensive structure. And whether we distance, we close, or we feel balanced and secure. And that
Mhm.
is something we bring to situations. But because this is biology, it's about what we do and know to feel safe,
Right. Yes. Comes back to safety.
protection and
Mhm.
safety. Yeah.
Protection and safety. So one of Bowlby's quotes, and I will probably more of a paraphrase that was shifting for me, very impactful,
Mhm.
was the idea of that when your initial bond is painful, we believe pain is the bond.
Yes.
And that did a lot for me personally, understanding what happened with my mother and then where I took that. But also just the lack of empathy and compassion we need to have for people who end up in abusive relationships.
It's not their fault.
Right.
There was a very famous experiment that Bowlby cites in his 69 book Attachment that is the basis of your paraphrase there.
Mm.
And it was hard for people to figure this out because if in fact, I'll tell you the study in a minute because it's very important. If in fact your attachment figure is abusing you, you should run away, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But evolution says it's better to stay close to someone who even is creating pain than to be out in the forest in a environment where you could be eaten.
Yes. Yes.
And we're talking about what we call the environment of evolutionary adaptiveness. And we have to think about it from that perspective of eons of humans being who survives and what groups of humans survive. So and behaviorism says, okay, well, if I give you a shock, you should run away.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a very famous study with chicks, and the chicks were shocked, and the way it was set up, the shock seemingly came from the mom,
Mm.
the hen.
Hmm.
The chicks were shocked and they ran to the hen more. And so whenever the chicks were frightened, they ran to the hen more because attachment. Now, I'm not saying that baby chicks are attached, they are bonded. Okay.
Right.
But attachment is such a powerful, protective, inherited
Mm.
drive
Mm.
that separation from that attachment figure is more scary and dangerous than being close to somebody who is going to hurt you.
Yes. Yes. And that is part of. Thank you so much for saying that. When we are, whether it's a friend or colleague or a patient or client, someone is working on getting away from a toxic person's, particularly malignant narcissist, just for us to continue to be patient and compassionate, and we can have our own boundaries, but just to have positive regard for the understanding
It's
of
not their fault.
that it's not their fault.
And in violent couples, regardless, just not that the male part of the couple, and of course, it doesn't have to be a male female relationship, but
Right.
there's where most of the research is. You have this cycle of couple maltreatment. The
Mm-hmm.
person leaves, they may go to a shelter, they may take the children,
Mm-hmm.
and then things settle down. And what do?
Mm-hmm.
They
They go
often,
back.
more often than not, they go back and there's a honeymoon period. And then there's that very common cycle that we all know about. Why? They were safe. You're safe somewhere else, but your biology is saying, I need to be in a relationship to be
Yeah.
safe.
Yeah.
And that was my relationship. And I don't have another relationship, and I don't have a relationship in the shelter.
Yeah. That's so
So
good.
you will go back to the relationship, and you will also seek relationships that you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the compassion the stigma
Mm.
that happens in our society for people who find themselves in multiple abuse relationships is just not fair.
Yeah. Amen. Amen.
You can't change what you know, and you can't change what you're desperate to have.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens in treatment and what you do with your clients is find the lost pieces of the self, try to create in adults and teenagers
Mm-hmm.
who are still creating a self, a sturdy, confident self that they can be on their own and
Mm.
seek different kinds of relationships.
Yeah.
And how do you know what those relationships are? That's the hardest part,
Yeah.
because the flags are for finding inside. Those flags say, I know you, but what
Mhm.
you know is pain.
Mhm.
So that's the
Mhm.
therapeutic course of treatment, and that requires grieving.
Yeah, a lot of grieving. Yeah. I want to segue. Thank you for saying that. Honestly, that's so profound. And you and I talked yesterday for a minute, and I was telling you about last night was a final foster care class that my wife and I did. We just finished our 30 hours. And in the course of that, the teacher there was amazing, but she's also very humble, and she would ask me to teach at times. And it just knowing, like when you're dealing with foster children, and some are going to go straight into a house to be the only house that's a new house but still not biological. Others are, it is foster home after a foster home, and then a group home,
Yeah.
and then a foster home. And so it was us preparing, and I shared with them. I got to teach a little bit about attachment strategies, and I shared with them about the still face experiment and the 5 moves that we do in connection from cradle to grave. And it's such a powerful experiment. Will you talk a little bit about that? Because that so goes with women or men being abused, and also our expectations and what we see with children who have experienced lack of safety within their own home and their own caregivers.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Ed Tronick was brilliant when he
Mhm.
created that experiment.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm very grateful to be able to hang out just a little bit with him, not a whole
Mm.
lot, when he came to UC Davis.
Mm.
The still face is the epiphany of turning away. So our conversation just was about maltreatment and pain and abuse,
Mhm.
but attachment trauma is any kind of a parent turning away, and it doesn't have to be maltreatment. I'll just say that that throws your clients into a loop sometimes, because they say, okay, my parents alive, they weren't alcohol, they didn't abuse me.
Yeah.
Why do I feel the way I do?
Yeah.
What's wrong with me? I have nothing to feel bad about. And
Mhm.
yet I feel awful inside.
Mhm.
So the still face incorporates at the level of behavior with a young baby. These babies are typically 3 months when you do the still face, but it would work with other age children. You just have to do more, right?
Right.
I'll say what the do is, but it is the epitome of turning away. We as humans depend on especially facial expression and the face to get information from our caregivers. And there's, I don't know, 60 years of research by developmental psychologists that describe what in the human face even a newborn baby is paying attention to. And any of you out there who've taken a developmental psychology said, oh, when it looks like Picasso, they don't like it, they don't look at it. And they look at the eyes and look at the outside of the perimeter of the face. They don't like faces that don't look right. All of that is about attachment. Okay.
Mm. Mm.
And so what happens in the still face, and of course, Darwin wrote a whole book on emotions and facial expressions. We get so much information from the face about what's happening in our interactive partner. So in the still face, what you do for the experiment is you engage the baby very close up in what you do normally, which
Mhm.
for many parents, not all parents, but for many parents, it's sort of smiling and moving in and moving out. And then the baby moves in, and the baby has to turn away to regulate and then moves back. And there's this beautiful head bobbing dance that parents and babies do. And in the still face, you stop. You're facing the baby, and your face is made out of stone, no expression, no movement, no twinkle in the eye, not even if there was disappointment, just no facial expression, communication at all. And you hold that for a short period of time. And the baby, what you see in these 3-month-olds, which is most of the data that I'm used to looking at, the baby looks, expects, acts, tries to get a rise out of you. Where are you? Where did you go? It's
Mhm.
kind of like a form of dissociation, actually, from the baby's perspective. And what you see in the baby is a sheet, literally a sheet of sad depression, a shade that's pulled down over their face. And the baby can go from a happy baby to a very sad baby, a depressed baby, that we can create depression in our babies at 3 months if this happens enough.
Wow.
And when the parent is told that the time is up, animate again, do what you were doing before, it takes a measurable amount of time for the baby to say, okay, you're back. They don't believe it.
Yeah.
So put this on the scale of life.
Yes.
This idea that the parent turns away, even dissociates, is not emotionally available or responsive to a whole infancy, preschool years, childhood. And it's not a surprise that the child then embodies a sense of helplessness. I couldn't do anything about it. You turned away. And that is also the foundation we're discovering of debilitating shame.
Yes.
Because not being responsive in those moments that the child wants you to be the most, the message in words, not the baby's knowing, but the message in words is, I'm not worthy of you.
Mm-hmm.
You turned away from me.
Yeah.
I'm ashamed that I cannot be worthy of you.
Yeah.
With becoming frightened and depressed. So that's the still face, and it really talks to a lot of our experiences. And I want people to understand as they're listening, 1 or 2 experiences of this in your life is not going to turn you into a dysregulated mess.
Yeah.
We're talking about consistent over time. One of the things I love about attachment is it's not a parent blaming theory. That's another thing that people have miscriticized it for. We're not blaming the parent. We're not blaming the child. We're saying this is what the experience is. And there is a reason why our parents do what they do. And it's not our fault.
Right. 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 And, the responsibility that's placed on us to learn about what's a threat to me that might not be a threat to you, what causes my dysregulation. And to me, it's just, for me, the more I know, and I want to know all of it, the more I know, the more then I actually now have agency. Like,
Yeah.
it's not about blame at all. It is about, I can't take a different step without some understanding of why I've taken all the other steps.
Correct.
And this has helped me tremendously to learn why my wife reacts so differently, why my best friend reacts so differently than I do. My traumatic shame that's in there and how quickly I can go somewhere despite all my work is important for me to know, and I'm still baffled by it.
Well, that's the grieving process, and that's the exploration of self that takes place in grieving. And we also know that we weren't meant to grieve alone, that we grieve in relationships. Now, there's some people who cannot embark on that exploration in their relationships because their relationships won't tolerate that one. Or grief is also a very private experience. And so sometimes we want to protect our loved ones that we are in relationship with, especially our children. We need to buffer our children from our grieving. And that's why I think a therapeutic environment with a therapist or a clinician of some sort that can be what we call the secure base, that can help a client explore and just be themselves in the moment and not have to worry about who's going to be affected by what, because we don't kick them out the door, right? We hold them and we bring them back, we catch them. But we can't do that process totally our own. And I know there are a lot of self-help books out there, but my recommendation would be give it a try. And I think some of those books are really good ways to start thinking about what questions to ask. But I would always endorse finding also a professional who can catch you and hold you in that way so you can go deeper than you can. Because when you're doing it in a book, it's your left brain that's working. And we
Yeah.
need to get your limbic system involved.
Yes, yes, very much. That's such a big part of the healing process. And I
Yeah.
love that such a fundamental part of secure connection is exploration, right? That children who feel connected to their parents as, can walk further away. Like
Yeah.
you can walk, right? They will literally walk further away. They'll look back and see his mom's still there, dad's still there, but then they'll come back and touch mom or dad's leg, and then they go back out, right? Like it's
Yep.
taking that and applying that to therapy, to life, to other relationships. And
Absolutely. We take
yeah.
the rules we know, we apply. And there's a beautiful French word for that. It's called a sortie, where
Hmm.
you make an exit, but you come back. And so in the world that I grew up with intellectually, which was the 1970s, we were still watching babies on the playground. We were doing a lot of ethological observations. And the sortie makes a circle. This
Mm-hmm.
is what the circle security people in infant
Mm-hmm.
mental health, you go out and you go, oops, I got a little bit too far. You come back, you
Mm-hmm.
make contact. This is what drives parents of teenagers crazy,
Hmm.
because parents of teenagers know what's out there.
Yeah.
And even secure teenagers take what we call risks. They get too
Yes.
far out.
Yes.
And the parents have to be, it's so hard to be the parent of a teenager,
Mm.
because you know what's out there as a parent, but you know your child has to fly, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak, has to explore. You can't hold them back too much. You can't push them into those
Mm-hmm.
situations. And so managing
Mm.
that sortie circle is, I just, my heart and my uh,
Mm.
I have a lot of empathy for parents of teens.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And when babies come into your life, they will be teenagers eventually. Don't worry about it now.
Right.
If you keep that circle going
Mm.
for children, it'll all work out when they become teenagers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have to trust.
Yeah. But I love that
Um,
you're putting out that them taking risk and finding some sense of self, right? That there is
yeah,
that there's value in that. And I'm sure it's terrifying.
yeah, it is terrifying.
Yeah.
But teens are known to take more risks than other developmental age groups, and parents
Mm.
are known
Mm-hmm.
to worry, and
Mm-hmm.
rightfully they do worry. Judith and I
Mm-hmm.
write about this a little bit in some of our work about
Mm-hmm.
parenting. But back to the life cycle. If the life cycle has managed this sortie with trust, then we get what's called autonomy.
Yes.
I can go explore. I can even take a bit
Mm-hmm.
of risk. And when I was
Mm-hmm.
saying earlier about my own, what had, flipped my lid, that's what I was meaning with my husband.
Mm-hmm.
My parents were a bit of worrywarts
Yeah.
for reasons I won't go into,
Yeah.
but also children of the Depression. And
Mm.
my husband is not a worrywart. He takes chances.
Mm.
And I'll tell you what, 99.9% of the time they come out just fine.
Yeah.
So
That's good.
I had to begin to know that it was okay to go a little farther out on my sortie, but I always did it with him,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah.
And then when I was sent to Europe at a conference on my own for the very first time, I actually drove a car in France, which is quite a hair-raising experience, all by myself.
Mm.
And then what happens? We see this in children's style play. What do? You tell your attachment figure about your accomplishment.
Right.
Guess what? I got to Toulouse and I got to the
Yes.
wrong train station, but I found the right one. Good
Yes.
for
Yes.
me.
Yes. Yes. That's the agency that builds the confidence, right?
Yeah,
For the
yeah.
autonomy. Yeah. That's
But
so good.
that sortie cycle is what puts it in place.
Mm. Yeah. That's good. I love learning new words too. So I will tell you that when you did my AAP and I was able to look at the pictures and just speak freely and then you came back with the results, that one of the first things you said to me, you said, I don't know what happened to you, I don't know what you've been through, but I'm really sorry. Like there's a lot of evidence of trauma. So that was very validating for me. Because even like the
Mhm.
title of my book is But Your Mother Loves You, because when I started sharing people about the abuse and how love and abuse got coupled for me, people love saying, But your mother loves you. Just be grateful she's alive. She's the only mother you're going to get. Like the level of invalidation, right? The trauma on top of trauma. And so for you to not know my whole story, just for me to speak just based on what I saw in the pictures, and then to have your validation was very powerful
Hmm.
for me. And I shared it with my male best friend. His name is Thomas Floyd. He's a brilliant trauma-informed therapist. And I shared that with him, and he started to cry. And I was like, why are you upset? I'm the winner. Like, like this is validation. And just him, for him, he felt it, right? And that goes back to the fact that I have blocked mourning. I don't feel it. It feels like a sense of accomplishment when you said it. And to him, he felt it.
Mm.
Right? Even in that, to me, shows how we perceive things differently, attach to things differently. He had a whole different experience.
Yeah. And the fact is, I didn't know you when I did
Right.
that. And I don't. And if anybody who's listening is, some people do, moving into maybe wanting to do the AP, please don't do any research first.
That's right. Thank you for saying
Don't go on the
Yeah.
internet. Don't read anything about attachment. But sometimes I'm doing the assessment with people who know a lot about attachment, and they
Mhm.
just relax and they tell their
Mhm.
story. I think it's quite marvelous that by looking at behavior in a baby,
Mm.
now it takes more observation as children go older, and I guess we used to be able to do this, maybe airport reunions when people got off the airplane. That was
Mhm.
my fantasy study, but now you can't do that anymore.
Mm.
Um, by looking at a baby, or by uh, an assessment. I don't like to call it a test. That gets people who have test anxiety all riled up too.
Right.
But by doing an assessment, by telling a story, and in this case, in the AP, it's not your own story necessarily.
Mhm.
You can get a snapshot of a life. And so
Mhm.
when we do a strange situation at 12 months, in 21 minutes, we can pretty much tell what the predominant patterns of interaction were between the
Mhm.
parent and that child.
Yes.
Father and baby, mother and baby, grandmother and baby.
Mhm.
And because in our culture and society now, many children are in daycare as many hours a day
Mhm.
as they are at home. So Carol Lee House at UCLA uh, many years ago said, and daycare provider and baby.
Yes.
Because babies, the biology doesn't know you're
Mm.
not the biological mother, and they
True.
don't care.
Right. That's right. Yeah, that's so
But
good.
in 21 minutes, we could see the history of that relationship.
Mm.
What's different as we grow up is when we become a teenager, we take all these relationships and we try to put them in together as a picture of who we are as a person.
Mm.
Do we deserve care? Who's going to take care of me? Can we explore? How do we do that? And so all these relationships, important ones, not every relationship we've had, but the important ones with our parent figures, come together and develop a self.
Yes.
And then that's what we carry forward. We
Mm.
still can know and talk about our particular relationships with our mother or our father or our grandmother. But now we have a sense of who we are as a person worthy of protection
Mm.
and
Yeah.
caring and comfort.
Yeah. Worthy of protection and comfort. That's so good. So if people want to do the adult attachment projective, if they want to be able to look at the pictures and have you code it, spend time with you, can you tell people? And again, people need to not read her most recent book or any of her books at this point. But can
Yeah.
you tell them? And we can put this in the notes of how to get in touch with you, cost, because this is a amazing instrument that is available and you're accessible, you're easy to get to. I can't believe what a low price it is to do this compared to other things that are out there. So please talk into that.
All right. Yeah. No, you're not paying me for my time. um, One thing that I ask is that individuals who want the assessment done are also in some kind of what I call therapeutic or clinical environment. That can be with a licensed psychologist. It might be with a meditation coach that one has been working with for a long, long time. Some kind of relationship
Mm-hmm.
that is as a helping relationship that is not a medical, not a nurse, not a medical doctor,
Right.
because the process that you went through was emotionally evocative.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to make sure that every individual who has the experience has a resource
Yes, it's
to
vital.
go beyond what I talk about.
Very
So,
important.
having said that, and sometimes a person is a therapist themselves, and they are either in therapy themselves or they say, "Well, I'm a therapist," and have a couple of people I've said try to figure out more about who they are, and then we do the assessment.
Mm.
The way you do that is there is a website that is the Adult Attachment Projective, but it has a very long name that has a history. The Adult Attachment Projective Picture System, AAP for short. Its original name was Adult Attachment Projective. And there is a website, and you can go on the website and find me there by clicking on I want more information about something, either a training or something, and I get an announcement. Um, that uh, that email that goes to me is called aapinfo
Mm-hmm.
at comcast.net. Comcast is a carrier.
Mm-hmm.
Another way is to reach me directly through the email that I will reply to you from that, which is my first initial C, my last name, my maiden name, initial Y, and my current name. I've even integrated those, right? So CY George,
Mm.
no caps, no spaces, no
Mhm.
underscores, at Comcast.net. Either of those places, those emails will get to me. Tell me in your email that you heard about it on Kim's podcast,
Mhm.
and then we'll have a conversation. The process is we meet twice. Once I give you the assessment, the second time I talk to you about your results. For those of you who are in therapy, which I hope you are, I also offer your therapist a no charge hour to talk about the assessment because many therapists are not familiar with attachment or not familiar with the assessment. The charge to you who is doing the assessment is $400.
Right. So for people who want to do this, it's only $400. Plus, if again your therapist has a right to charge you for the hour that is spent with them, if they choose to do that. But the time with her and the assessment, the coding, everything is only $400. That's an
Yeah,
incredible thing to offer.
it probably should be more like $1,000, but
I agree.
I don't want to do that. I want to make this assessment as available as possible.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's a lot of money for all of us. It's a lot of money for me too, by the way.
Right.
But some people save up after a while, and
Mhm.
and then do the assessment. Some people are not ready to do the assessment, not interested, and then later on they are. I mean, it really
Mhm.
depends on you. What I will say is, and I'm not a marketer, and Kim hasn't brought me here to be a marketeer,
Right. Right.
but you can't do this on your own, and you can't do this using the internet.
Right.
You can get
That's right.
good starts, and of course, your book and some other books. There's another
Mhm.
book coming out that I really like, that is written by Sue Marriott and her colleague.
Oh yes, yes. We love Therapists Uncensored. Love them.
Right. Well, she's coming out with a book.
Yeah, secure relating, I think.
Secure Relating in an Insecure World, I think it's called,
Yeah.
or something like that.
Yes.
And it is coming out in March.
Mhm.
And so I think that's probably a good resource, but you have to be really
Mhm.
careful what you read. And
Mhm.
and I guess if you have other questions, talk to Kim about books that you
Yeah.
recommend.
Yeah. Yeah, we can add that to the notes as well. Well, thank you. Your time is valuable. Your knowledge and wisdom is priceless.
Thank you.
All the work you've done in this field is it's just tremendous. It's outstanding, and you're outstanding. Thank you for your generosity today.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me. And I want everyone to feel my good wishes go out to all of you. We
Yeah.
we are all trying to do, even secure individuals are trying to
Mhm.
do the best we can in this world. And also, if you have children,
Mhm.
uh, parenting is hard work, and every parent is trying to do the best they can. Sometimes they just can't do it on their own.
Yeah, that's right. Got to be in this together. Thank you
Yeah.
all for listening. I know it's a lot of information. Also know that you heard something today that may have flipped your lid, and I trust you heard something help you reconnect to who you really are. We'll see y'all next time.
Thank you for listening to Flip Your Lid with Kim Honeycutt. Please subscribe, rate, and share. You can find Kim on Facebook or Instagram at kbhoneycutt. To get an autographed copy of Kim's book, visit butyourmotherlovesyou.com. Remember, no matter what, treat yourself well today.